Well, hey everybody, it's the Cryptid Huntress. Welcome in. Happy Monday, everybody. What a glorious day. I hope you guys all had a wonderful weekend, and I know I did. I had a great weekend. We had a wonderful show on Saturday night. We had Trey Howell of Squatch Me Now come on, and we talked about all the Cherokee legends and the giants from the West, Judaculla, Sukaloo, you name it. You guys, please go check out his social media. And let's definitely support him with his crowd. What do you call it? I want to say crowdsource. I can't remember if that's what you call it, but it's where he's getting his docu-series together, his film, Masters of the Hunt. And that's going to be fantastic. So yeah, so thank you guys so much for being there. It was awesome. Really good time. And we had a great week of shows last week. If you guys missed any of the shows, please go check them out. In the archive, you can go to my website or you can go here on YouTube. Some of y'all are watching on Facebook right now too. So y'all go to my YouTube channel and check those out. Well, I have definitely been getting into the werewolf phenomenon pretty often. I try to hit werewolves and Dogman at least once a week. We do 4 live shows here. And I love me some werewolves. And there are so many werewolf reports and sightings all over the United States, all over North America. And I have my resident expert on werewolves here, Dr. Dennis Carroll, today. And we're going to be speaking about one of his local legends, local werewolves in South Carolina. He is very well versed on it. I mean, I told you guys he might actually be a werewolf, right? This might be Dr. Dennis Carroll we're talking about today. I'm just kidding. Actually, this is back from 1945. Okay, so it's not Dennis. But back in 1945, we're talking about hundreds of people encountered this werewolf in South Carolina. It may have some connections to the Appalachian Mountains. It might have some connections to other werewolf sightings here. And we're going to discuss that today. All right. Well, if you guys would like to follow along, my volume is bad, so I may have to do something about that when I bring Dennis up. If you guys would like to follow along with my shows and everything, please go to my website. That's the cryptidhuntress.com. Let's see if I can find it here. And you guys can find all of my archives of the shows, my list of events, all the stuff that I'm going to be doing and where I'm going to be. Go to that, including this weekend. I will be at a UFO conference up in Blue Ridge. Please go hang out with me there. It's got a great lineup of folks that will be there with me, and that's all day this Saturday. Be there or be square. Okay, so we got that. Okay, and also I do have a Patreon and also an Etsy shop if you guys would like to support the work over here on the channel. I do appreciate all the support. You guys are the best and huge supporters, and I do appreciate each and every one of y'all. And yes, okay, so I'm going to pull up Dennis. And while Dennis is up, I'm going to fix my volume because I know it's crackling. I just heard it. So Dennis is a fantastic researcher. I'm going to go over what we're talking about today after I pull him up because the volume is bad right now. But Dennis has decades of experience in the paranormal, and he is he's my resident expert on werewolves. You guys can find him on his YouTube channel, Hunting the Shadows, and on his Patreon, Hunting the Shadows. Please help me welcome to the show our good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll. Hey, Dennis.
Good afternoon. It's good to visit again with a member of one of my wolf tribes here, definitely. And then you certainly are a member of my wolf tribe. You and I share a big affinity for werewolves, definitely. Absolutely.
We do. Dennis, I'm going to, if you wouldn't mind, could you tell the audience a little bit about the Anderson Werewolf? I'm going to fix my volume and I'll be right back. Okay. It'll
Yeah.
take me 30 seconds. I'll be back. If you would like to go ahead and start the show by telling the audience about your local werewolf. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, the Anderson Werewolf. I live in a town called Anderson, South Carolina, which is in the upstate of South Carolina, right on the border of Georgia, actually. And we have had a lot of very strange and interesting experiences over the year in this town. That's what I was talking about with Jessica earlier. I just happen to wonder if maybe this town doesn't lie along some type of a ley line of some sort. But anyway, there's been a lot of interesting things, and we're going to touch on some of those. But one of the most fascinating has been the Werewolf of Anderson. Now, this took place back in 1945, and so this was a good many years before I came along. Okay, but it does happen to have a connection to the very first case that I ever had. Let me say this, okay? I have been a boots on the ground researcher and investigator probably, for longer than some of you have been alive. Some of you before you were born. I was out there doing it actually. That's how young you are, but I'm not saying how old I am. But anyway, um, so I've been doing this a long time, and the very first case that I ever had when I was about probably 15 years old. The very first case I ever had was an actual werewolf case right here in this same town where this other one occurred. Now, this was probably like maybe 25 years after the original werewolf thing we're going to talk about today. But I'll talk some more about that later on. But it's kind of connected to this. And when I had that case come up, and like I said, it was my very first actual investigation, this werewolf sighting. I knew about this story that we're going to talk about today. I knew about this, and I said, "Oh, I wonder if there's some kind of connection. If this is that same werewolf that's popped up again, kind of thing, So that's the way I kind of took my investigation. I took it that way, but it does have a connection with this. So it's a fascinating story, definitely.
It is a fascinating story. And hopefully, I think my volume sounds better now. Sorry about that, y'all. Super fascinating. There's so many werewolf reports, so many werewolf sightings all over the United States, but particularly the Appalachian Mountain region. And this morning, our good friend Kenny, aka Star Fox, just released a video that he and I did on his channel, Star Fox Radio or Star Fox Media. And we talked about all the different recent werewolf and dogman sightings and reports in Georgia. And a lot of them are along the Appalachian Mountains. Some of them are actually down in South Georgia, which are not the Appalachian Mountains down there. But lots of reports. It's almost shocking how many modern day sightings we're still having of these things. And you don't hear about it as often. They're not putting these reports in the newspapers. However, back in 1945 in Anderson, South Carolina, there were a lot of reports of this one that they didn't know if it was one or multiple ones, I think, but they were in the newspaper, and the sheriff had his own encounter with them, which gave it even more credibility, Dennis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How about
absolutely? The interesting thing,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was actually going to show a couple of
We kind of blinked out for a minute there. Okay.
Yeah, I think there might be a little delay here today. Okay, so
okay.
I have some newspaper articles here, and so I wanted to show the audience some of these because actually they said hundreds of people encountered this werewolf, and they called it a werewolf. And it says that hundreds of people encountered it. They said it was a large animal. They thought it was coming down from the mountains, and it was slaughtering the livestock in the area. People were, nobody was harmed, right?
Right. There were no actual physical attacks, but supposedly a lot of farm animals were attacked. There were some cats that turned up missing, actually. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the interesting thing was it was more frightening to a lot of people than actual physical attacks that went on that they know of. But it was supposedly, I think there was one incident where it actually attacked an automobile or did some damage to an automobile. This sound, I'm gonna tell you what. When I go back and look at all these reports, and especially these newspaper articles and all that, this sounds like your classic werewolf activity kind of thing, because they are very destructive. A true werewolf is like I've said it before, is sort of a psychotic type of a predator. It when it gets on a line on something, it doesn't stop. It goes way out. It's very wild, very uncontrollable type of a thing. And what's interesting about this werewolf, Jessica, is the way it was described is very black looking. This thing sounds downright demonical, the way they describe it, and the way it acted was very much like what a werewolf would do. And like I've said, before, we've talked about this before. When a werewolf gets on your trail, when he gets your scent, he will not stop till he gets you most of the time. That's just the way they sort of have a line of directional thought. They can't stop doing what they're going to do. Very much like a shark attack in water is the wolf on land.
Yeah. It's actually quite scary. And the more I was reading about these, it did also sound a lot like a Dogman. It actually, to me, I was getting more of a Dogman vibe from this than I was a werewolf. But I think that the werewolf would be a blanket term because I don't think people even talked about dogmen back in the 1950s. So everything would have been a werewolf, I think. But to me, it sounded more like a dogman. I didn't find a whole lot of attacks on people, so I thought, well, it sounds more like a dogman.
Well, there's, I think, a lot of misidentification going on with that. I mean, it would be so very hard to misidentify a dog man and a werewolf, especially in the dark, especially if you're scared out of your wits by this thing. You're not going to, ask for a card. Show me your proof you're a werewolf or a dog man kind of thing. It's not going to do that, definitely. Well, I wouldn't advise it anyway. But I think there's a lot of misidentification going on with some of this stuff. I had a werewolf report come to me not long ago, and this incident happened on a country road. And a young boy and girl had been coming back from the movies or something that night, and the car gave out a gas, and they were right very close to a convenience store. I mean, just right down the road. And the guy says, "Just wait here. I'm gonna run up here and get a gallon of gas, put in the car, and we'll go drive back up there and fill the car up." So she's sitting in the car waiting on him to come back, and it's a sort of an autumn night, and they're like on a country road, and says she hears something at the back of the car, and I think they were in something like a Pathfinder or a Forerunner or something like that, and she hears something at the back of the car. And she said, I look in the mirror, she had a mirror on the side, look in the mirror, and said she sees this shadow at the back of the car, and it has like ears sticking up. And she said, what is that? And she said, I first thought it was a big dog had run up, and you know how dogs will jump up on you. Got a big dog, what I'm talking about. They'll jump up on a car sometimes like that and look in a window or something. She said that's what she thought was going on. She didn't think anything about a werewolf or dog man or anything like that. And she said when she looked in the mirror, she could see it move, and it had on a red checkered shirt, like these plaid shirts people wearing them. She said it had on a shirt, but it had the head and face and all that of a awful looking type of a wolf thing. That's what she told me. She didn't actually come out and say it was a werewolf. She didn't come out and say it was a dog man. She said it was a wolf looking thing. Okay. And said it was looking in the back, and it was bending over. That's how tall this thing was, bending over, looking in the back of this thing and vehicle at her. And it's about this time is when her boyfriend showed up back with the gas. He said he saw something run off from the back of the car, but he didn't, he thought it might have been a deer or something he's scared up or whatever. And when he went to get back in the car, she was scared out of her wits, because she had seen this thing looking at her. And she said one other thing, it had very red eyes, and they weren't glowing like flashlights, she said, but you could see they were very red looking kind of eyes. It scared her to death. And the next day, they found some very long claw marks in the back of this car where this thing had been. But I told her, I just happened to wonder if, that sounds very much like werewolf activity, because dogmen don't usually walk around wearing plaid shirts. This sounds more like a werewolf, but it's very unusual that a werewolf would turn you loose and not do anything to you. I said somebody was looking out for him, definitely, because that does not usually happen with werewolves. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something to this, okay? Because the go-to Halloween costume for kids and for adults, if you want to dress up like a werewolf, you wear a red flannel shirt with checkers on it, okay? Like the red and black. I know this might be a long shot, but, with the little people and the gnomes, they wear these red pointed hats. What is the deal? Do you think it's just a stereotype that werewolves have these red flannel shirts on? I mean, I've heard, ripped shorts or ripped pants, red flannel shirts. I've heard this from people who have actually had first-hand encounters with lichens, werewolves, dogmen. They didn't know what they were when they saw them. But I wonder if there's something to that red shirt. Could that be something magical, maybe? If we're talking about werewolves and magic.
Red is a very magical color when you think about it. And supposedly in folklore, we won't get into that today, but in folklore, they're, wearing a red thread supposedly keeps evil spirits away from you. Red is supposed to be a color that evil witches do not like, too. And the Fae are supposed to be kind of shy of red as well. So it makes you wonder about that. Definitely if there's some kind of connection with that or what.
It does. You got to start, I love connecting dots and trying to figure some of this stuff out. And we got to wonder, is it just a stereotype, or is there something that causes that? We talk about with the S walkers, what do we call them? Let's say flesh walkers or something. I don't know. It's just another name for it. You're not supposed to say the word, right? But they sometimes will put on a pelt, right? Put on a pelt. Well, maybe sometimes you put on a red flannel shirt and you become a werewolf. I don't know. Just saying. But nonetheless, the people in Anderson, I wanted to read a couple of these newspaper articles if I can, because I think this gives some historical context to what we're talking about today. And on this one, I'm not sure I can read a whole lot of this because it's just a little blurb. But it says, the first sentence of this article says, many reports on werewolf. Now for the latest news on the werewolf. Dr. R.E. Mason, well-known Anderson physician, reports he saw the werewolf late Saturday night. He was crossing Tippins Bridge over 6 and 20 Creek when a black animal dashed across the highway. It was almost 5 feet long and about 3 feet high. Okay, and I think it says the animal disappeared into the woods, or it disappeared into someplace. That was a physician. Okay, and I'm assuming the pillars of the community are the law enforcement, probably the judges, the lawyers, and the doctors, I would think. And so I found that to be quite interesting. We also have this other article here. This is just part of an excerpt. It says, it stood on its hind feet for a moment, then scampered away on all fours. Scores of reports have come in regarding the animal. Some pigs and dogs were killed down near the Savannah River, and several cows attacked by some sort of wild beast. Many people are convinced the whole werewolf business is the outgrowth of the activities of a panther or a wild dog. Every few years, something comes straying down from the mountain or out of the swamps to scare the daylights out of some people and make life miserable for other animals. Some 35 years ago, for example, a hog weighing 1,175 pounds was attacked and killed on a farm near Star. For several nights thereafter, farmers guarded their stock with guns. And so it goes on. So this has been going on for decades, Dennis, before this happened. And they say that whatever this is came from the swamp or the mountains.
Yes, actually, I traced stories that supposedly went back as far back as Civil War days, where some of these things supposedly were cited back in the 1870s and 90s. Where there were other reports supposedly. A lot of this was told, Jessica, and wasn't reported in newspapers, but was told amongst the farm communities. Back in the old day, farm communities were sort of like we have, internet networks now. The farm community, they kept in touch with each other. They told about things. Farmers would meet out in the fields and talk about this kind of stuff. So a lot of this got passed around. It's actually happening before it ever became well known. Now, this incident in 1945 actually made national and world news. It was on an old newsreel. I don't know if you remember seeing that, but there's an old newsreel talking about this, the werewolf down south. And I think it was very interesting too that like only maybe 3 years before this incident happened, I think 3 or 4 years, the original Wolfman movie came out. The original Universal Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah.
And I'm often wondering if it didn't have some kind of influence on some of this too. But then when I began to check and see how far back this went, that kind of blew that theory out of the water, because this goes, like I said, back to almost pre or former Civil War days, actually.
Wow. That's wild, and I'm not shocked at all. Hey, Andrew from Gnomes and Gnomes and Trucking Express. What's up? He says it was either a werewolf or Dogman that he caught a quick glimpse of in Missouri off at I-55 southbound, right behind the Missouri State DOT way station. In the tree line, it's all a farming community there, and that seems to be pretty textbook when it comes to dogman sightings. A lot of times they're by the highway, near a lot of land, of course. I really enjoyed having Colleen Norris on the show a few months ago. She came on and talking about the Ohio dogman and how a lot of those sightings and the investigations that she's done, they're by the highways and the interstates out there, and of course in the cemeteries. Okay, that's where she has that famous video of the grave digging dogman out there. Um, yeah, just the more I think about it, the more I'm reading some of these articles. It does, to me, it feels more like a dog man. It could be both, though, Dennis. Right? You think some of the reports and the sightings could have been dog man, some could have been a werewolf.
Well, the biggest difference between I think we talked about this before. The biggest difference between the werewolf and the dogman. The dogman has different attributes than the werewolf. The werewolf, when it gets ready to attack you, usually it runs around on all fours, and you hear that description in these stories that it was on all fours. It stood on its hind legs for a while. This is the way a werewolf will attack you, Jessica. It may come up to you on all fours, but it will stand on its hind legs to actually physically attack you and come down on you, whether with a biting or clawing action on you in that way. Dogman, by the way, when you talk about Dogman, he's usually walking around most of the time on his hind legs, more so than a werewolf does in that respect. Now I'm talking about a full-blown type of werewolf, and not the kind of werewolf we talked about before that's sort of the Wolfman type. This is a different type of werewolf. Now, that walks around on its back legs all the time, most of the time, very much like Dogman. Okay, Wolfman and Dogman are very much alike in that respect. But the werewolf usually runs on four legs until it gets ready to attack you. And that's when it starts standing up on his hind legs, it's all over for you, mainly. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a bad outcome for you. That's the way a werewolf goes, But here's the interesting thing. It's not only the kind of things that they're doing, it's sort of like their attitude they have. And like you mentioned earlier, these things are not only out haunting the forest or owning the way out desolate places, they're hanging around cities and towns. They're hanging around communities, especially the werewolf does. The werewolf, although it does run out in the forest and goes after game and stuff like that too, because it is a very bloodthirsty animal. Very much so. I feel like in many ways it's more bloodthirsty than Dogman is in some ways. Okay, and that's because like I said earlier, it's very psychotic kind of an animal. It just randomly kills and eats people just because it wants to. It enjoys that. basically, because it's just like pure evil.
Yeah.
Dogman, on the other hand, is more like an animal in some aspects, more like, a tiger or a bear or anything like that. It acts more like an animal than the werewolf does. But the interesting thing about all of this is that, like I said earlier, if you're, confronted by one of these things, it could be the one you could be misidentifying it. Okay, but I would not want my life staked on it. Okay, definitely, I would not want my life in the balance on what I thought it was. I'd be trying to get out of Dodge real quick. Okay, because if you make it out alive in an encounter like that, you're incredibly lucky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we don't know how many people have gone missing that did encounter a werewolf or a dogman. We have a lot of missing people in our national parks, especially, and we don't know exactly where all those people are going. And some of them could be victims of werewolves and dogmen. I don't know. Well, speaking of, I guess we could say law enforcement, okay, park rangers, law enforcement. The sheriff of this town had his own encounter with this werewolf back in 1945, right? And so there's actually I wanted to read this article for the audience today because this is from October 25th. I'm assuming 1945, concerning the strangest varmint. A varmint to me would be like a rat. Like, I don't know. I guess just something that's a nuisance. I guess that's what that would be. But concerning the strange varmint, which has been in Anderson County, the Anderson Independent carries the following story. All doubts as to whether or not some sort of strange animal is running loose in these parts were dispelled yesterday when Sheriff W.J. Erskine announced that he had personally seen the critter while driving out the Portman Highway in company with Fred Whitfield. It says courthouse custodian and Gene Shore, county jailer. So that was 3 people, all of, high stature in the community. Said the headlights of my car picked up the thing as it bounded out of a field and dashed across the highway. Sheriff Erskine said it was black and about 5 feet long. Let's see if I can get one more sentence in here. Let me take that banner down. Said everything happened so quick, I didn't get a good look at it. Well, that's a way to have plausible deniability, right? To see something, but you didn't know what it was.
Well, that's the thing about these newspaper articles, Jessica. Most of them are written with a tongue-in-cheek kind of a thing about them. You got to kind of read through them and kind of read between the lines. So they said if it, in one actual part of this article, it says, "Oh, we got, we know what it is, or some type of a thing." And yet later on down, it says, "Hey, we didn't get a good look at it." Okay, that's the frustrating thing about some of these newspaper articles, definitely. I notice this happens a lot with UFO reports and stuff. They always kind of get creative with these newspaper and news articles. Especially when it comes to tongue-in-cheek stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I just found it really interesting that these 3 men who are, work at the courthouse, the jailer, and the sheriff were all together and saw this, and they actually put it in the paper. So it was just confirmation that there is something there, but they just didn't know what it was. And I think that's the case with a lot of cryptid sightings these days. People see something and they think, well, their logical brain, their logical thinking has them believe that maybe it's just a large dog. It's got to be a wolf. It's got to be something. It's a bear. But then, because you, especially if you're seeing something that's not supposed to exist, right, Dennis?
Oh, okay. Yeah, to me, the most interesting thing about this is some of the descriptions that they give, though, Jessica. Some of the people that actually saw it. This thing being very tall and very dark looking thing, and it even grinned at somebody. And one of them said it smiled at me, kind of a thing. That's not good either. That sounds demonic in a way, definitely. And the other consensus was that this was something that came down out of the Appalachian Mountains. Anderson is situated at the very foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and we get a lot of stuff from there, actually. And once in a great while, even bears wander down here from the mountains and all that. But this was not a bear. Bears are a whole lot different in their the way they do things and the way they even after livestock and stuff like that. Bears don't usually go after livestock a whole lot like some other animals do. Bears are more into berries and doing stuff like that too. Besides just eating meat. I wanted to say one other thing about the werewolf though. If you think you're at the site of a werewolf attack, most of the time you will find body parts left. Okay, and that tells you there's probably been something very much like a werewolf there. I think that's a very telltale sign. And another description of this thing that people talk about is the fact that they actually seen it devour cats. Cats that were out that lived in the alleyways and all that. I think one person said he came out of his a store in town. Now, this was in town, actually, the town of Anderson, and that they found 3 or 4 dead cats scattered around, just nothing but body parts of them. That sounds very much like something a werewolf would do,
It does, or a psychopath human, too. I remember I was doing a show one night with I had a show over at Texas Front Porch with those guys for a while, and we got on air one night, and I was not prepared for what Tex showed. He showed some pictures of some. It was horrible. I think it was like some bunny rabbits or some cats, like kittens, or it was either bunnies or kittens. It was something I was not ready to look at that had been torn in half and stuff. And there was a suspicion that it was either a psychopath human, or it could have been, from what I remember, I think it was like a Dogman or something, potentially. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was real careful to know what we were going to talk about before I got on air again after that. Because it's really sad. Oh, go ahead, Dennis. It's really sad.
To note, Jessica, feral people would be the same way. They would eat anything, cats, dogs, whatever the situation is. That's just meat to another animal or somebody that's trying to survive. That would fall in line with some feral people that we've talked about before. And there's a lot of stories of them being supposedly in the Appalachian Mountains as well.
Mm-hmm. It could be. Yes. So, okay, I'm trying to keep up the comments, y'all. I'm gonna pay attention to what we're doing over here. I was gonna ask you, Dennis. You worked in law enforcement for many years, and you probably worked in law enforcement in this area. While you were a police officer or a deputy, did you ever take any calls of something that could have been related to a dogman or a werewolf?
Yeah, I think like I said, there are a lot of stories. There's some strange stuff that go on in the Appalachian Mountains. We all know that. We've been in there. You and I both have been in the Appalachians a lot of times. And you've got a lot of strange stories and things that are told of the Appalachians. And there are things out there that I think to this day, and I'll just venture this, my own opinion, that there are some cryptids that we don't even know about, that may be out there that we've never encountered. I like to call these sort of the cryptid X of the cryptid world. They work along different lines and do different things. Some of them may not even be visible to the human eye, for that matter. And you hear a lot of these stories, and of course the Appalachian witch stories of witches who can supposedly turn into big black cats, or sort of like Black Panther type animals. Supposedly that's very prevalent in the Appalachians too. And there was some talk about that probably also being related to this werewolf thing in Anderson, that it could have been something like that. And a lot of the farmers talked about that they believed it could have been something that had something to do with conjuring or witchcraft of some sort. That might have brought something like that down out of the darkness of the mountains.
Oh, it could have, but also we do have panther sightings. Maureen is asking, are there mountain lions in South Carolina? I personally do know there have been some on game cameras. I don't think they're supposed to be there, but nonetheless, just like in Georgia, there have been Black Panther sightings here in Georgia. What about it, Dennis? Have you heard of any panther sightings in South Carolina?
Oh yes, I've actually seen one my own self. I've seen a mountain lion, but it's many years ago. And I talked to park rangers about that, and some of these other guys about these so-called. I've run down about 2 or 3 different cases I've had with these so-called Black Panthers that have been seen, and of course the park rangers will tell you, "Oh, there's no such thing as that. That doesn't exist." You know, a lot of them are ordered to tell you that too. By the way, I won't go. I won't get into that. I think it's a little bit of a cover-up going on their part. But anyway, they'll tell you it's not out there, but I've seen that with my own eyes. I have seen a mountain lion. It was not a cat. It was not a bobcat. It was a mountain lion. There's a big difference between that and a bobcat. Now, in South Carolina, we have a lot of bobcats. We do have some bobcats. I've seen a lot of them over the years, but they're not. They're maybe slightly larger in some aspects, a little larger than an average house cat in that respect. They don't go after very big game a lot. Now, not I mean, once in a while you may get a very hungry bobcat that'll do anything. Okay, it'll try anything, but most of the time they go after small things like other cats or small dogs or rabbits, stuff like that along that line. They're more small game. But they will sometimes take down bigger game. They will get deer, if especially, and we got to remember this when it comes to animals in the wild, Jessica. And that's why I warn people whenever you go out in the woods, try not to look like a victim waiting to happen somewhere, okay? Because these animals are watching for either something very young that doesn't know what he's doing or something very old that may have a infirmity of some sort. That's the game they go after, okay? They will not usually threaten anything very healthy that doesn't look like a victim, okay? And
Mhm.
that goes with Walmart parking lots too, by the way. Definitely goes with all that too.
Yeah.
But these things are just that way in nature. They look for the weak, and that's part of nature, kind of thinning out the herd in that way. They do take care of itself in that way. So that's the way these animals work. But I'm gonna tell you what: if you ever run up on a mountain lion, bear, or anything like that, you need to be very careful how you handle the situation, or you may end up on the wrong end of the stick, as we say in the South. You may end up in a bad situation. And when I saw that mountain lion, I left him alone. I didn't try to draw unusual attention to myself because I knew without a doubt it knew that I was there. Okay, it's not like I'm pulling anything over on him. Okay, he knows you're there without a doubt. He has known you have been there for about a mile or so away. They begin tracking you and start circling, and wolves do the same thing, by the way. Okay, although the wolf population in the Appalachian Mountains is not as like prevalent as it once was. I think there's still wolves there. Definitely, we know coyotes do that. Now, coyotes are not very prone to doing the same things that wolves do. They don't hunt the exact same way wolves do. You got to study your wildlife to kind of understand where all this stuff is coming from, and how you deal with it. But I had a lot of people say, "Do you think the werewolf of Anderson was a mangy old bear?" I said, "No, no, no. The descriptions don't fit." People would have known a bear. If you see a bear, Jessica, you're gonna know most of the time it's a bear. That's just the way that goes.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people who have been attacked and unalived by what some people, especially people in the Dogman community and the Cryptid community, had suspicions of them being attacked by dogmen and unalived. I've been given some blind targets for some of those attacks, and I do believe that it was actually big cats that jumped down from a tree that attacked some of those people, including the Brenda Hamilton case out of North Carolina. I believe that was a big cat that jumped down out of a tree and attacked her. But I did a show on that, so if you guys want to go back and look at my playlist, it's a remote viewing playlist, and it was the Brenda Hamilton case. Um, so yeah, I think that happens, and cats are silent but deadly. Okay. And they usually do jump down from trees. So we always have to be sure we're looking up when we're out in the field doing our field research.
Absolutely, and I think also when it comes to something like Dogman and all that, to me, You try to say oh, an animal's going to act like this or it's going to act like that or it's going to do this. Really, all bets are off. If they're hungry, they're liable to come after you. Okay, that's just the way it goes. If they're hungry, if they're hurt, they're having a bad day, just like you and I, we often have a bad day sometimes. So do animals. They have a bad day. You might catch them on the wrong day, you know. Here's the thing about nature in itself, Jessica. We must always understand and respect, and that includes the unnatural things of nature as well. They always do the unexpected. That's what you can depend on. It's always unexpected.
Yeah, that's a good point. Expect the unexpected. I like that. That's an everyday life too. You know, I love it how we're talking about cryptids, but we're also able to give everyday advice to the people who are listening and who are watching today. And yeah, I wanted to go back to the sheriff, okay, because I do believe I think there was an article actually. Well, let's see here. Wanted to go back. Let's see. What was I going to put? I was going to talk about here. Well, I thought I had an article, just another article about that, but maybe it did not upload. Let's go ahead and just read this one while we got it up. Okay. Still in the subject of superstition versus fact, we hear that up around Anderson and the 6 and 20 Creek section, the people have been seeing and hearing what they declare is a werewolf. One party of 1,500 hunters headed by a returned veteran went out there. Oh, I know, it was the hunt party. That's where I was going. The hunt party, not the sheriff. It says one party of 15 hunters. That's a lot. That's bigger than my research team. Headed by a returned veteran, went out after the elusive creature one night and cut loose a barrage of rifle and shotgun fire after one hunter felt a hot breath on his face and was hurled bodily into the creek. Our personal belief is that if it was any hot breath around there, the werewolf was not furnishing it. The next afternoon, the werewolf was seen by 2 cotton pickers who declared the animal came out of a patch of woods, reared up on its hind legs, uttered a horrible cry, and dodged back into the woods. A few nights later, a farmer went into action with his shotgun when what he believed was the beast tried to get into his house. And still later, 2 men reported seeing an animal that looked as big as a calf, but wasn't a calf, and after a few minutes disappeared as if into thin air. Cooler opinion is that the werewolf is really a bear and had strayed down from the mountain, since the large bear has been seen several times nearby in Oconee County. We remember several years ago, some strange monster was reported from the swamp around Beaufort, but I don't think they ever got any kind of proof of it. That's where I was about to go, not the sheriff. I was going into the hunt party. Okay. The hunt party. They had a hunt party of 15 hunters, and they actually called in a separate werewolf expert, Dennis. What do you know about that?
Well, I did try to track the wolf hunter down, the werewolf hunter, and never could get a name for this guy, whoever he supposedly was. But he was supposed to have had a lot of action in the Rocky Mountains. Anyway, they never. I don't think he actually on purpose wanted his name given out. But anyway, that was very interesting too. So he was sort of like given to be a tracker. You know, trackers are very important for game and stuff like that. And a lot of the wild management people used to employ trackers for that purpose alone, to figure out what kind of a tracker knows exactly what kind of animal he's looking at. He tells by the different signs and, of course, the tracks and the way it moves and does all this stuff. And an animal will lay down tracks, Jessica, different when it's running than when it's walking. And I think that's very interesting, too, that a lot of these stories never talk about any kind of tracks. There are a few, I think, mention it, that they actually came upon these types of tracks. That was something else I wanted to know more about. Did they actually have some actual pictures of these tracks or whatever? But they didn't. I think if this guy had been a supreme tracker, he would have definitely maybe got some photos of it anyway. But it was very interesting. So I think I kind of get more of a feeling that he was not an expert tracker. I was more like an amateur in that respect, unfortunately.
Well, that is something that keeps me scratching my head on a lot of these cases that people claim that. And when you look into it, a lot of information on people who are attacked out in the field or at their home or wherever, and it is suspected to maybe be a dogman attack. I have to tell you, especially in that Brenda Hamilton case, anyone who has tracking skills, I mean, I'm trained in tracking. I've been tracking for a long time. I teach my son tracking. And you have to know the animals that are out there, okay? And just to tell the difference between a canine track and a feline track, it's pretty easy, okay? It's pretty easy. I've actually done like a quick little course here on my channel before where we showed different animal tracks, okay, like the paw prints for big cats, little cats, dogs, potential dogman tracks, things like that. We've done it here on the channel. I might just have to do this again one day soon. Because it's pretty easy. Anybody with tracking experience can see what's out there. You can tell what animals they are. All the guys on my team, women, guys, everybody, we all can tell you what a track is. And if I don't know what one of the tracks is that I come across, somebody on the team does. And so, I mean, maybe we're just better trackers than most, but I would think when somebody is out there and there's a person who's died and there's animal tracks around the body, they should know exactly what got that person. They should. And that's why it's baffling to me, Dennis, that these cases aren't solved, or that they don't know what animal it was, because if there's tracks around it, they'll know. But see, then comes into question, well, maybe something was in the tree, but it still has to come down to the ground.
I think, Jessica, if you run into an animal that's very much like the cryptids that we talk so much about, they're not going to be a normal type of a experience, okay? And they're not going to leave a normal type of track, and it's going to throw a tracker off, definitely. Here's the way I've been taught over the years about tracking, and I've done a lot of tracking in my time. Tracking is like reading a book that nature leaves for you to read, okay? And you can take, just for instance, I'll give you a quick example. The print of a large cat is going to be different than the print of a wolf, because a wolf cannot retract his claws. A cat does, unless it's a cheetah, by the way. Now, a cheetah won't do that. A cheetah just keeps his claws out all the time. That's probably why it's so incredibly fast. It can keep those claws out, give it more traction. Anyway, you got to understand what animal you're looking at. What it's doing. Is it standing still? Is it stepping in its own tracks? Is it running? Or is it tiptoeing through the wood? Whatever the situation is, you got to understand what it is you're looking at, and you've got to come at tracking from many different ways. But that's the interesting thing that you bring up. If you're going to have tracks, that's the first thing I do would be taking a picture of them. Mm-hmm. I'd be getting some evidence. If you can't cast them, take a photo of them, definitely, But I had an incident that happened to me. You remember, I might have told you about it. I call it a Cryptid X, a thing that was in the farmhouse. They ran out of this old dilapidated farmhouse and disappeared in the bush. I could never get a look at this thing. And that really hurt me because I wanted to see it bad, okay? It left tracks across that field, Jessica, okay? And I remember stopping and looking at those tracks, and I said, what the heck kind of a track is that? I didn't recognize it. It kind of looked like it had the tracks of a wolf or a dog or something along those same lines, but it was different looking. And I didn't get a chance to examine. Here's what happened. I kept going, trying to get in the wood line to go after this thing and see what it was. But it got away from me. I went back to look at those tracks, Jessica. I knew where they were. It didn't rain or anything. I mean, I immediately went back, and they were not there. They were gone. Okay? And the only conclusion I could come to is if something supernatural exists, it would not leave tracks like that. They would disappear, wouldn't they? I mean, it stands to reason if what you're dealing with is not a normal, natural animal, the tracks are going to disappear on you. Okay? They're sort of more like of a spiritual nature than a physical. Yeah.
Well, and there's also, Dennis, there's the case of, I think it was Eric from Media Palace was on the show, and he was talking about the beasts of Brushy Creek. And I think I may be misquoting here. I hope not. But I vaguely remember him saying that there were some tracks found where some people had gone near this creek, and it's an area of high strangeness, all sorts of Bigfoot sightings and stuff like that. There had been some tracks down there, and some people had been taking their cars and like causing a ruckus, like doing donuts down by the creek. And apparently like the Bigfoot or whatever's out there got mad. And there had been some tracks, but when they went back to go look at these tracks, when they knew they were there, they had been covered up, like they had been wiped away. So it was almost like a cover up was going on. I'm pretty sure, I hope I got that story right. But it was something like that. And but they looked like they had been intentionally covered up by a human, potentially, or maybe another cryptid.
I know there was, that show we did about the Werewolf Junction. You remember that? There was, I think, a couple of reports on that of tracks disappearing as well. I could see somebody like Bigfoot doing something like that. Yeah. And I've heard of evidence of them finding what they call brush marks. So like something had taken a broken limb or something and brushed out the tracks. That makes sense when you think about it, because if this guy, even Bigfoot along those terms, if they're very good at hiding, they're going to definitely hide their tracks. I mean, that makes sense when you think about it. And here's another thing. These things are able, and you gotta consider this too. If these things are able to be very quiet and how they cautiously walk through the woods, they know how to put their feet down better than you and I do when we walk through the woods. We make a racket. That's just the way it goes with human beings. But, the indigenous peoples knew how to do that. They could walk through the woods and hardly ever make a sound or break a twig. They knew how to do it. If you know how to place your feet in the brush, you're not going to do that. But you got to know how to do it. I mean, that's something that becomes almost like a second nature to you in that respect, because I have done that over the years. I've kind of learned that you don't make unnecessary noises out in the woods. It just doesn't make sense. You don't want to do that, because you're advertising yourself big time out there to some things you might not want to advertise to.
That's true. Well, unless you're a forest ninja. Okay, that's what our friend Alan Thomas calls the Bigfoots, the forest people. The forest ninjas, and it's true, they are silent. That includes Dogman and Werewolves, I guess, too. This is an interesting comment here, and I wanted to pull this up. This is from Kenneth. Just tuning in, I've heard that the Dogman werewolf howled 2 different times in Pickens, South Carolina. Also, recently, it was caught on audio off Highway 11, Pickens County, Oconee County, about 6 weeks back. And this is wild because our good friend Robbie Rains, who comes on the show with me, he and I have done some Bigfooting together, and he's a deputy in Pickens County, actually. And he sent me about a year ago, he sent me, it looked like a canine track, a big canine track over by the school, one of the schools over there in Pickens County. And so it could have been a gigantic dog, but it was really interesting. I'm going to have to get in touch with Robbie. He has a show called DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. So we need to let him know about that. He lives there over in Pickens. So, wow. And that's not too far from Anderson, right? Dennis, is that close to Anderson?
No, not very far at all, really. And here's another thing, you got to consider. If you're looking at what I would call a definite werewolf track, it's going to kind of put its foot down different than a dog would in some ways, because it's just the way this is the way I would think. So I've never caught an actual werewolf so I can measure him, okay? But it's going to put his foot down slightly different than a dog, because his weight is dispersed differently. You're talking about something much bigger than a dog here, or even a wolf, a natural, kind of a wolf. This is going to have more weight to it. Now, you take your German Shepherd, for instance, okay? You know how big it is. A wolf, an actual wolf in the wild, a timber wolf, is going to be quite larger than that. Not a whole lot larger, but a little larger. It's going to probably be, how much you think your dog weighs? About, 95 pounds, something like that?
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a timber wolf would be around maybe 130 at the most, something like that. 140 at the most. I mean, a very big one. I have seen some photos of some very big wolves. Wolves get big. It depends on how good their diet is, how well they eat, how big they get, But you got to remember what you're looking at if it's a werewolf, and I have to say this again, it's a supernatural creature. Okay, it doesn't fit in the order of nature that we know in that respect. This thing is a thing of dark, black witchcraft, magic, or whatever name you want to give it. This thing is demonic in that respect. It's not a real, honest to gosh, physical type of a being like you and I are. Now, it's not going to have the same attributes as something like a gorilla would, or a bear, or anything else in the woods. It's not going to follow those laws as much, okay, in that respect. But when we got to remember and we've talked about this before, something is transitioning from the spiritual into the physical aspects of our reality, okay, is when it's transitioning like that, it's different being altogether. You understand what I mean? It's not physical and it's not spiritual. It's that in between. I like to call it the in between phase. Okay. And it may exhibit different signs in that phase as well. So you never know what you're truly looking at. But there's a lot of supposition in this. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, Raymond has an interesting point too. He says the extraction teams come in to take out the target and then cover it up. Yeah, I've heard that too. I've seen videos of, let's just say rogue Bigfoots and stuff being chased down by helicopters, and yeah, I didn't see them taking them out, but that was the goal, I think, from what I was told, which was really sad. But yeah, they got to cover their tracks, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very much like that troll hunter movie I told you about, where they would actually go in and cover up the troll activity by leaving a dead bear and blaming it on him. It was the bear that did this. They would leave bear tracks and all this around. And you have to wonder if definitely there is a team out there doing true cover up and a lot of this stuff. They're gonna know how to do the job, okay, and they're gonna do it well enough to fool everybody. Maybe even real trackers. That's just the way that goes. And but like I said, if you run up against something that's supernatural, it's not gonna have to worry. But like that thing I saw, whatever it was, I don't know what it was. I can't tell you for sure to this day what it was, but it did not leave normal natural tracks. Put it that way, because tracks do not disappear. When you walk right back to where they should be there. You know what I'm saying? And that's what really throwed me about that. Would a werewolf do the same thing? Would a werewolf be like that? That's my question. Would it leave tracks like that? Would it leave bloody handprints on you, or whatever the situation? Because it is a supernatural type of a thing, So what are you dealing with, natural or supernatural?
Well, whatever they are, they're intelligent, highly intelligent. Now, whether or not you guys believe that there's a werewolf breeding program and a dogman breeding program, I think there could be. Okay, I think there could be. We've talked about it several times on the show. And by the way, Nick Sylvester is going to be our guest on Wednesday, everybody. So Nick Sylvester is coming back this Wednesday on A Glitch in the Matrix. He's the one that came and we talked about the potential there being breeding programs and our government working with all these cryptids. We're going to get into that again on Wednesday. But from what people say is that the werewolves are highly intelligent. You can have full conversations with them. It's like talking to a human, basically. And so, yeah.
You got to think about this too, Jessica. And like I was approached by the CIA, we want people with supernatural talents.
Oh.
I mean, how much cleaner can you get than that? I mean, that's what really, really sticks in my craw. Okay, it's a burr under my saddle to this day. Why do you need people with supernatural talents? But you got to remember one thing: the body of this beast, this werewolf, has the mind of a man. That would make it a very formidable weapon. Wouldn't you like to have a security team of that? Standing by when you need them.
I always say that when I get rich, I'm not going to say anything, but there will be signs. Okay. And so if you guys see me with a security detail full of werewolves, you'll know I struck it rich one day. Okay.
As long as you can control, as long as you have control over them, that's the main thing. That would be it, definitely. But you know what? If our government, and I don't doubt it one bit, has some type of thing program like that, I'll just make it say it's a program. If they've got a program like that ongoing, they're definitely going to control their subjects, because you don't have a weapon without what? Control.
That's true. Yeah. Well, but when it comes to the intelligence, though, they're really intelligent. But there's also something called free will. Okay, and unless they're, I mean, they may be being used almost like slaves if they're being used for our military. I mean, who knows if they're being weaponized and stuff? They're probably under massive. I think according to Nick, they're under MK Ultra mind control, and probably have chips in their brains and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very deep rabbit hole to go down when it comes to the weaponization.
If I had a pet werewolf, he would definitely have a chip in him, so I could control him for the way I
Oof.
wanted him to be. Yeah, he would
Oh
definitely
man.
have a chip, and you know what? Like I said before, I'll say it here again today. The technology that you and I we're playing with right now, that we're using and utilizing, the technology we all have is at least 100 years behind what the United States government has, without a doubt. And if there is such a thing as microchips that can run human brains or any other kind of brains out there, you're definitely know without a doubt you're utilizing them. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think I was actually bringing up the intelligence of the werewolves because we're talking about the tracks and like covering the tracks. They would probably, I would think, I don't know if dogmen would do that, but I think werewolves would. I think they would cover their tracks, especially if they knew that you were on their trail. Actually, I think that you would. I think they would definitely cover their tracks. Um, but
Absolutely. If they leave the
yeah,
track, they're going to definitely take care of that situation. If you're that stealthy about it, you know, like the ninjas you were talking about, you're going to do
those
that.
things.
Absolutely. You know. And I remember an incident. I have to tell you about it sometime, when I actually had a run in with two actual Cherokee skinwalker
Mhm.
sisters. I'll have to tell you that story sometimes, a wild story. But anyway, I have met some of these entities over the years, and I know what some of these things are capable of, without a doubt. And that would not surprise me at all that they're not going to take great pains to cover themselves up, because their secrecy is very important to them in many ways. And
Mm.
when you deal with the dark things of this universe, Jessica, the darkness is sealed in its own secrecy. You know.
Yeah, that's that is an interesting story. We'll talk about that on a future episode. That would be awesome. Definitely want to hear
Mhm.
that story too, Hans, for sure. Well, I have a question for you, Dennis. There's so many events, so many things that go on in Anderson, South Carolina, and I think earlier you mentioned there it could be on a ley line potentially. I do have a map. I was wondering if do you think that this activity, and we'll get into the other activity going on in Anderson too, because there's a lot more than just this werewolf that showed up and a potential multiple werewolves and dogmen there. We've got like Crybaby Bridge, which has been featured on multiple ghost hunting shows, is there, and also some kind of UFO event that you were telling me about. Let's. Do you think the ley lines could be responsible for that? And let me pull up a map and let's see if we got ley lines there. How about that? Here
I
we
think
go.
there's some kind of a Twilight Zone that thing going on here,
Hmm.
definitely. And if you look at that map very closely, you can see where there are conjunctions of ley lines, but there are definitely some running through uh, parts of South Carolina and all that. But I have to
Yes.
wonder about this, okay? And when you look at the ley lines, consider this fact, okay? Those are the main lines, but could there not also be to the sides more branches of these things than are truly realized? If that's the case, then a lot of these areas would definitely have that kind of activity going on. Here's what, just not just because I was born here, okay? What freaky stuff is going on in just this little small town? This is a considered a mid-sized city now. It's next door to Greenville, which is a larger city in the upstate. There shouldn't be this much stuff going on here that has happened. Like I said about that UFO incident that made national and international news. I had my own UFO incident here. I've had a lot of encounters and stuff here, not just in other places, but here as well. What's going on with that? It's all. And here's one more thing, one more fact. The whole city of Anderson lies along a very, very, very ancient indigenous trail that runs through this part of the state. Matter of fact, this trail runs from the mountains, from guess where? The Appalachian Mountains to the coast, to the Charleston coast. Okay. That's a long trail, my friends, and it has a lot of different little branches that go off of this trail. And a lot of these ley lines are laid along, not just here in this country, but in Europe and other places in Africa. A lot of these ley lines run along these trails, these indigenous trails that have been known and made by man since the dawn of history.
Mm-hmm. There's a ley line that goes from north and south that does run along the northern side of the Appalachian Mountains, or on the western side, I guess, and throughout different parts of the Appalachian Trail and the Appalachian Mountains, there are ley lines for sure. And I did want to note that I have my friend Tracy had been traveling throughout the United States, mostly the Southeast, all the way out to Texas, and was plotting ley lines. And these are not just these main ley lines that we see on the map. You had said something, well, could there be like offshoot ley lines? Yes, there are, 100%. There are. And I actually met her at the Etowah Indian Mounds here in Georgia, up in northwest Georgia. And she had been going from Indian Mound to Indian Mound. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. A lot of these mounds are situated in those places as well. Let me tell you something about this. Okay. And look at the Appalachian Mountains. They are older than the dinosaurs. Okay. That's how old those mountains are. Okay. They were here before there was ever a North American continent that we know today. Okay. They were here, and they were actually connected to some of the mountains that go all the way into Romania. Okay. When you think about this is wild to think about. But anyway, look how old this is. And look how much of the earth energy that may be connected in these areas to these things. I think without a doubt, just like the mounds you talked about, the different places all over the world, this has got to be some kind of very strong connection to the natural energy of the earth. Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And what Tracy was doing was actually following the lines, these ley lines, connecting them to what we know them as Indian burial mounds all over the southeastern United States, all the way out to Texas. So I found that very interesting. I'm not exactly sure what she was doing that for. I kind of have an idea, but it's energy work, ley line work, getting just making the connections for energy flow purposes and stuff like that, I guess, and doing what the two ladies whether they were doing what they call grid work.
Yeah. The ancient peoples had a connection with this, definitely. I think they felt that earth magic, is whatever name we want to give it. I think they felt it. I think they were connected to it in many ways. And I think their communities were founded around places just like Stonehenge, and some of these other things were also founded very close to these areas for a very distinct reason. Absolutely. And here's another thing you got to think about. If you live in a place like that, would that not be the ideal place to live and have a family and grow up and do your work and all that stuff in a place of high vibrational energy? Makes perfect sense when you think about it,
Yeah, it does. We've got Danny in the chat today. He says, my grandmother told me stories about the Wolfman of Anderson, and we have Dogman sightings in Wilmington, South Carolina, near Anderson. Greetings from South Carolina. You're talking about my backyard. So, yeah, there's actually several people in the chat today that say that this is where they live, either near Anderson, Anderson, or Pickens County, those areas. So, yeah. Our southern brethren down here in the South. And it's interesting to know if any of you guys have had any werewolf sightings or dogman sightings down there.
I think, I had somebody ask me not long ago, why does so much stuff happen in the South, especially the Southeast, southeastern part of the United States where you and I both live, Jessica. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
the number one reason is those mountains, Appalachian Mountains, because look how many, that map you had up earlier, how many of the different southern states connect with this, uh, definitely without a doubt. To
Mhm.
me, that makes perfect sense. It's got to have something to do. It's almost as if the Appalachian Mountains were a magnet for paranormal activity.
Oh, they definitely are. That's where I do most of my Bigfoot research and Dogman research too. I mean, we're down for whatever's out there. We're here for it, and including ETs too, UFOs and ETs and all that stuff. Pell crawlers, S walkers, it's all there, and I've experienced just about every bit of it out there. Um, can
I
you?
may,
Can you
That's what I said. I told somebody not long ago. I would rather not live anywhere else but here, okay? Because it's such an interesting place that we live in, an interesting part of the North American continent, definitely. Of course, other people may feel differently in other places, but I think it's kind of cool where we live at.
Yeah, I do too. Oh, Ursula and Moondog Davis are talking about finding moldavite in North Carolina. That is very rare. I have a jewelry shop, and I often get requests to bring in moldavite jewelry. It's got to be like authentic, good stuff. High quality. That stuff's expensive. It can be,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
that's in North
It got a
Carolina.
lot to do with the natural minerals
Hmm.
that are here. Absolutely, I've
Yes.
also thought about that, and of course, a lot of the minerals are also connected with the water sources that are the natural water sources, like where I'm living right now, very close to Anderson here, is Lake Hartwell, which I know you've heard about, one of the largest land-made lakes in the country.
There.
I was, matter of fact, last night on my, I do a little thing for my membership on YouTube, and last night I dropped a story about my very interesting night I spent on the island of the dead in the middle of Hartwell Lake, not too far from Georgia. Uh, I dropped the story about that, so if you're not a member, you might want to check that out sometime. But anyway, uh, there's a lot of, I think, connection with water as well. Water seems to be like a natural, conductor for some of this stuff as well. But minerals are definitely, I think, a connection, along with, and I'm going to be doing the show tonight on Earthlight mysteries. That's another fascinating connection of what's going on here. I don't know if you've ever experienced the Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina. I have. It is fascinating stuff. But there's a lot of places like that all over the world that have these weird lights that go on and these things that happen. There's a lot about this planet we're on, Jessica, that people do not understand or really truly realize. That is very, very interesting stuff.
Mhm.
Um, Especially, and there's even connection with some of these so-called earth lightens that have a connection with earthquakes and volcanoes, so it makes sense when you think about it. Yeah. And if you're especially around a mountain range like the Appalachian Mountains, you're going to definitely have places like that as well.
Mhm. That's right. All the places that my teams research, they are areas of high strangeness. It's not just Bigfoot sightings. It's not just experiences with UFOs or what. It's like everything. We're talking about like portals and at least two of the places that we research, we have had encounters with portals. There's only one place that we've actually got it on film or on video, but we have everything happening there. And we do call one of those places the Skinwalker Ranch of the South. There are places like this all over the country, all over the world. And it's just a matter of finding it. The best way that I find places like that is where, in our team too, so wherever there's a local legend or some lore of a legend, the Appalachians are full of them. But if you get a place, I think we found the meadow, we found that place because Trey had been hearing stories about ghost lights and a ghost woman, a ghost road actually down there where we go. And so they went out there to go scout it out one weekend, and it was just full of teeming with all sorts of activity of other sorts. And so that's how we found that location. Okay, or a location close to that. It's not exactly where that was, but it's close to it. So if you have a local legend in your area, y'all, everybody listening, um, you're probably going to have a lot more than just that local legend there. I'm just saying, for whatever reason, maybe it's portals, maybe it's just this area rich in, high electromagnetic activity. Could be ley lines. I mean, it could be that that land is cursed, and that's where these cryptids have been summoned to go protect that property.
And something else I think we can consider too as well, and I've talked about this before. Words have power, okay, and sometimes I have to wonder, just like the Werewolf of Anderson, how much of this may have been manifested to a certain extent by people talking about it, bringing it to life in many ways, giving it life or giving it existence, or however you want to put it that way. You have to wonder if we're not careful sometimes that we may manifest some of these things by simply thinking about them or talking about the legends and stories, that we actually bring them to life to a certain extent. I have seen evidence of this, Jessica, over the years in many of my different investigations and research that I've done, that there may be a actual part to this, that there may be, like that old saying, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. I think manifestation may run into some of this stuff too. You can actually, and I've seen this with a demonic, and I'm not going to get into that today. It's another story for another time. But I have actually seen them utilize that and get behind it and work with it, okay, and do what they wanted to bring stuff like that into reality, And I have to wonder if maybe part of the power of the werewolf is his ability to manifest itself that way, You have to wonder.
You do. Well, and we also have to take into consideration the backwoods cults, the rituals, the Satanism that's going on out in the fields and stuff like that. Chicky Blue has an interesting comment. It says, previous land history, does anyone really know? Good to consecrate your property and put iron and salt around it. Now, Dennis, that is your specialty. You know about rituals and the occult. And so that is a big factor of werewolves.
Absolutely, I think there's an absolute big part of this that is a conjuring thing. Of course, we know the werewolf, supposedly the real true werewolf, is connected to black magic, to demonic forces, without a doubt. And that's a big part of it. And what I was going to say, connected to what I just said about manifestation. What is a spell? What is a hex? What is a curse? It is a manifestation of thought and willpower to a certain extent. And we have to remember that too. That's what triggers it. I call it the trigger on the gun. Okay. That's what triggers a lot of this stuff to be placed. And I think a lot of this conjuration may be tied to that, definitely. If you wanted to create a lot of bad things, if you were that mean and kind of an evil person, you could conjure up a werewolf. Would that not be a perfect tool to get your revenge or whatever it is you wanted to do? That would be the way to go. And I have to wonder how many, and reading so many of these stories of how Dogman is connected with these things, Jessica. There's a definite connection with a lot of this too with Dogman. Like we've talked about, I think you and I did a show about how he shows up around graveyards and cemeteries. Why is there that connection? You got to remember something about the demonic. They love graveyards. They love cemeteries. That's another connection. And I'm reading stories about, like, our good friend BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, did a book, on some of these Dogman reports. One of them talks about a Dogman manifesting inside of a jail cell with a guy. And the guy says, I'm from an enclave of these Dogmen, and we want you to join us. What's going on here? This is something going deep into the darkness that we don't really think. I mean, it's sort of like another side road in this, okay? But we got to remember, words have power, definitely. And just like you said, there are a lot of curses on this land too. I think there are some of these areas that have guardians to them. That would be the perfect guardian, would be a werewolf or dogman type of an entity for a place like that. It would not surprise me if some of these evil people are not conjuring these things up or calling them forth from the darkness for their own purposes. No, I would be surprised if they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a place up in Northwest Georgia. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not really that close to the Etowah Indian Mounds, but it's not that far either. and it's that place that I talk about a lot called Corpsewood Manor, and it's where those two guys, and I hate defining them as Satanists, but they were, okay, and being like, oh, they're Satanists, and this is why this happened, but they were both brutally unalived, and they had done a lot of, let's just say, rituals and stuff there on that property. Friends with Anton LaVey, okay, who actually was rumored to have been out there to show them where to put their house. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I do know that they did have a lot of occult background to them, and that is an area that my team has researched, and there are Dogman / werewolf sightings there, and it is, I'm going to say it's a fact that people still go there. They call it Devil Worshippers Mountain, and to this day there are rituals done there, and I've talked about how there was blood splattered everywhere when we went, and it turned out we thought it was hopefully from a chicken or something, but it turned out to be human blood, and there's a story behind that. Turned out to be an accident that happened to somebody there. But at the same time, the land requires blood, according to my remote viewing data of that place. Okay, so I think that keeps a portal open right there, potentially, for where they have werewolves. Maybe they're conjuring werewolves or something out there. I don't know.
The land and the rituals require the blood, definitely. They require life to the extent. As a matter of fact, we're doing a show with your good friend, yours and mine, good friend Chantel. Maybe we're doing a show on Aquarius Rising about the vril. And, we've done a show about that, I think, in the past as well. You and I have done a lot of shows, Jessica. But anyway, the vril is a fascinating thing. Look at the Nazi connection with this, and they were like devil worshippers, okay, big time. They were into that, and this may even go, and like I'll be talking about on her show, not only to the South America and to the Antarctic, but maybe even off-world here to the moon and to Saturn and different places. Like, we don't know how far-reaching this goes and what it entails, but I guarantee you, without a doubt, there is that hand of darkness here that is connecting a lot of this stuff up, and we need to realize that the darkness in our world can very badly affect our lives in so many different ways, and it runs through so many different areas of our culture and what makes us us, as a people and as a species. We are bound many times to the connections of this darkness, and we don't even know it. That's the interesting part about some of this stuff. But there are people out there that will utilize that darkness, definitely. No matter which way they can go with it, they're going to use it. They're going to do things with it that may not be very good things at all. Usually they're not. But it would not surprise me, people like, with Corpsewood Manor you're talking about and all these other places, that they haven't opened these dark doorways. And when you open these doors to darkness, anything, my friends, can come through. I mean, anything. Things beyond even our imagination may be waiting out there in different realms and dimensions that we know nothing about.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And, the mind is a powerful tool. Okay. And that can be good and it can be to our detriment. Okay. At times, because when you're talking about manifesting, and sometimes, I like to say, well, we all have our own realities. Okay. And some of us are very aware of how we can manifest our own reality, whether that be good or bad. And so your thoughts become things. And if you're watching, okay, so I'm going to make this example because I used to watch those homicide shows, like the First 48, and it was all, and I loved them. I watched them all the time. I was fascinated by it. And when I was living in Decatur, Georgia, I always said, it's all fun and games until it shows up on your doorstep, right? Well, it showed up on my doorstep, and they were not literally, but it was on my street. They were filming an episode because someone had been unalived on my street where I lived. And I never watched the show ever again after that, because what I felt like, because I'm very well aware of manifesting.
When it gets too close to home, it gets very personal. And that's why I tell a lot of people, I've talked about on your shows and my shows too, we talked about eventually one day, sooner or later, the darkness reaches out for you and it's going to touch your life somehow or another. Hopefully you're going to, you're not going to be unalived by it, definitely, but it's gonna touch you some form or fashion or another. It's in our future. That's just the way it goes. But we've got to remember the number one key behind this darkness. The number one thing behind all, just like those shows you're talking about, the crime shows, and I've been fascinated by crime my entire life. I was in law enforcement, okay. The serial killers are fascinating study, and all and all the different very famous crimes like Jack the Ripper and all these other things. You got to remember the number one equation that connects all of this together. That includes the darkness, the witchcraft, the demonology, and every bit of this. The one key is the human mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we're always pumped full of fear and stuff and craziness and chaos on the televisions, cable networks. It's because we're creating their reality for them, and so we need to start creating our own reality, something that's more beautiful and not so chaotic and violent, something that's more beautiful. And so, yeah, we talk about weird stuff here, and it's pretty dark sometimes. But we also have solutions to how to protect yourself from it, and it's not all doom and gloom. Okay, these things happen, they exist, and so we are just exposing
That's
it.
very true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you don't want to feed your stomach the wrong food, okay? You'll be sorry if you do, okay? you don't want to feed it McDonald's every day or whatever. It's gonna turn out bad. You don't do your mind and your soul that way either. Don't feed it a lot of junk. Don't feed it that darkness, that negativity. Like the werewolf we've always talked about. You don't feed the beast, or he's liable to overwhelm you. Definitely, the werewolf symbolizes the darkness that's inherent in all of us. Okay, we don't need to feed that darkness. We don't need to enable it. We don't need to make it stronger. We need to suppress it. We need to keep that animal down where he needs to stay. I've seen so many people, especially in law enforcement, that let that animal loose for all the wrong reasons. You don't want to do that. And we've got to remember what we feed ourselves with, spiritually, physically, and mentally, determines what we truly are and what our life will be like, and we need to never lose sight of that. Let's not put a lot of junk inside of us, okay? Let's try to eat better. Let's try to think better. Let's try to have a better spiritual aspect on these things, because if we keep feeding the darkness is going to eat us.
No, it ain't gonna eat us. Not gonna eat me, at least. Okay, because I'm aware of it, and I think that's the first step, is understanding that it is here, it does exist, and so to protect ourselves from it. Protect yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself, y'all. Okay, and oh my gosh, this is awesome. I actually wanted to make a little connection too between Anderson and some of the places that I researched, like the Troop Herd Corridor down here in Georgia, where we have our own werewolf. I know I bring her up all the time, but Emily Isabella Burt, R.I.P. and bless her heart. She's down here buried down in Talbot County, and she is actually Georgia's werewolf. Now I know we have a lot more Dogman sightings, but historically she is our resident werewolf in Georgia. I think she passed away in the early 1900s. She lived in the late 1800s, and she's buried down there where we do it's close to where we do some of our research. And it's an area known for alien abductions and UFOs and Dogman sightings and Bigfoot sightings and ghosts and all that. So it's similar to your area up there near Anderson, Dennis.
Absolutely. There was talk about so I have a big connection to Georgia, definitely in that respect. I used to kid my mother and tell her that the only thing that ever came out of Georgia any good was I-85. But anyway,
What?
She didn't like that.
I love Georgia.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I'm just kidding.
I had to kid her a little bit on that. But anyway, I have a strong connection to Georgia. So I thought that was very interesting when they said maybe this werewolf came out of Georgia. That's another connection.
Yeah. It took the midnight train out of Georgia, I guess, up to South Carolina. It's just a hop, a skip, and a jump. And from what I know, dealing with the Dogmen and the Bigfoots out in the field, they cover a lot of ground, and they can cover a lot of ground very quickly. And so it's not out of the possibility that some of these werewolves and dogmen are coming from Georgia, but most likely, I think that there's a lot of cave systems. There's a lot of the mountains up there, a lot of places for them to hide and places for them to travel, unseen, undetected up there.
Absolutely. If I were going to hide, that's where I'd go. Absolutely. There are definitely a lot of cave systems in the Appalachians and the foothills as well as that. I've been in a few of them myself. Definitely. So if I were going to hide, that's the one place. I know, we've talked about that before. Matter of fact, talked about it on Shanty's program as well. There is a whole nother world beneath our feet. It could be anything down there, and that would not surprise me if some of this stuff is not coming or originating from underground, without a doubt. And I think that's part of what may be going on in the Appalachians. Absolutely, especially these. And I have a lot of reports around here of pale crawlers being seen and some of these other things. I think they come out of cave systems as well. The list goes on and on with a lot of this stuff, and you have to wonder, like I said, there's a definite origin for a lot of these things. I like to go back in my years of doing research, and like I said at the beginning of the show, and I've been well over half a century now of research into these things. I like to go back to the origins of stuff. If you go back and see where the beginning of something started, it kind of tells you the whole story of where it's come from, and gives you a lot of perspective on what you're truly looking at in that respect. So to me, that's where you go. You go look at the origin and the beginning of things, and it seems like everything keeps pointing underground,
It does. Well, and then you can factor in all the deep underground military bases and all these facilities and secret bases in the mountains. I mean, I was up in Cherokee, North Carolina, and the two gentlemen that were kind of showing us around the reservation up there, and where all the Bigfoot sightings have been. This was about over 10 years ago. It's been a while. But we rode I think it was between where Judacola Rock is and Cherokee, North Carolina. At some point, they pointed out a mountain.
I've been there.
There was actually a military base. They said, this is the entrance to a base right there into that mountain. And I thought, man, that is so cool. It's supposed to be a secret, but somehow they knew about it. But it was right
there. Cherokee is where I had that incident I mentioned earlier about the two Skinwalker sisters. Cherokee, that is a fascinating area in North Carolina, definitely. Matter of fact, I've had a lot of interesting stuff that went on in the North Carolina mountains, from the Snallygaster and on back. There are a lot and the Wampus Cat amongst them. Not only Bigfoot and Dogman as well, but there you go again. You're in the Appalachian Mountains. Definitely, you're going to have some weird stuff, without a doubt.
Yes, we are. Yeah. And, and I had this one incident. Okay. I did go up and do that investigation at that cave in Tennessee where there were possible S-walkers. That was the history behind it. It was an S-walker cave. But we also, when I was up in Cherokee, near Cherokee, camping out with Chief David and Will and some other guys from Cherokee, there was a night where something did approach our camp, and Will started yelling at it in an old ancient dialect of Cherokee. It's not even. He said that he's one of a couple of people that even know it or speak it anymore, and he started yelling at them, and it was right behind me. I thought he was trying to scare me. But it was he was not playing, and he said that a S-walker had approached, and it follows him around and stuff. And he said that he was instructing it to stay away from our camp.
Well,
and then he left, and it scared me.
You need to remember the true Skinwalker, the Yinalushi, is Hopi and Navajo, but a Skinwalker is basically a witch. Okay, that's what you're talking about. Either it's a male witch or a female witch, whatever situation. That is what you're looking. And look, what we mentioned earlier about the Appalachian witches that turn into the big black cats and all this other stuff. They are nothing but the under the umbrella of what I call the shapeshifters. That's what they basically are. And but they go about in somewhat different ways to accomplish that. But you're still shapeshifting, That's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm. Lots of shapeshifters in the Appalachian Mountains too. We've got old Spearfinger is up there. That's my favorite and my most terrifying shapeshifter of all up there in those mountains and around where we do our research.
Raven Marker is a very interesting one too. The Raven Mockers, they say, even scare Spearfinger. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Spearfinger's a nasty one for sure. And I'm actually going to be in Blue Ridge next weekend. I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday, actually, for a UFO conference up there in Fannin County. So I'm going to be right in the middle of Blue Ridge Parkway, the Appalachian Mountains right there. And so, yeah, if anybody wants to come out and hang out in the heart of Cherokee legends, come up there and hang out with us this weekend up at Blue Ridge. So, yeah.
Oh, very neat.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to watch your back, though. Watch your back and don't whistle in the woods. There's a bunch of rules, right, Dennis, of people when you go into the Appalachians. There's a list of rules that you kind of have to go by.
It's actually a rule that I broke with those two skinwalker sisters. But anyway, I think another thing is interesting, since you mentioned that this area is a hotbed for UFO activity. I've not only had my own UFO experiences here, but there's a very famous one that took place here in this town as well, in Anderson, South Carolina, made very big news worldwide. So this whole area, that includes the Appalachians and North Carolina and South Carolina, Georgia, is a hotbed for UFO activity. It has been for hundreds of years.
Yeah. It has been, yes. Marty's asking, can we buy tickets at the door? Yes, you can. You can get them online or you can buy them at the door, too. I think they're going to have raffles and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it's all to benefit the Fannin County Food Bank, I think. So all proceeds go to the food bank. So it's for a good cause. But yeah, you can get tickets at the door there. And there's some events like a meet and greet the night before at one of the pizza places around there. So I'll put the information up on my website if you guys want more information. thecryptidhuntress.com. Yeah. But wow, this has been a fantastic show today, Dennis. And I'm super glad that you came and hung out with me on this. I knew you are the resident expert on werewolves, especially werewolves from your hometown. How about that?
Yeah, I had a little interesting back history on that, definitely. And that's the one thing I could never complain about. I've always lived in an interesting place to research.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to come out there. I really definitely need to get in touch with my friend Robbie today. Robbie Rains, he's up in Pickens County and is a deputy over there. He's a police officer, and I need to let him know about those howls that one of our audience members heard on their property out there somewhere in that area. And so yeah, it's great that we have a good network of field researchers and fellow people who have told us about the research.
If you're ever in my neighborhood, let me know. I'll give you a tour.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to be up not too far from there. I'm actually the keynote speaker, y'all, at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference this year. And so that's coming up March 22nd. I mean, it's a nice little drive. It's not too far from Clayton where we're going to be. So if anybody's in town,
interesting nights in the Clayton, Georgia mountains, though, definitely. That is an interesting spot in the mountains. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, this is the 2025. This is one of the flyers that Dr. John Stamey sent me. This is one of his conferences. And it's going to be at Piedmont University in Demarest. It's just a few minutes from Clayton, not too far from there in the mountains. And it's a beautiful area. It's Piedmont University. Saturday, it starts at 9 a.m., I believe. And March 22nd. It's March 22nd. I think there's a meet and greet the night before. But yeah, we'll be up in the North Georgia mountains in March. Y'all put it on your calendars if you can make it to that. It's going to be a fun event. So I think it's my first keynote speaker event at a Bigfoot conference. So yeah. Oh, okay. We got Scott says that's his hometown. So I better see you there, Scott. Okay. I better see you there and get to hang out. Yeah. It's always fun. And so thank you, Maureen. Thank you. Yeah, I love speaking at events, Dennis. I know you do lectures and things like that too. Do you have anything coming up?
Yeah, that should be very good.
Yeah.
That's a prestigious honor. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Dennis, do you have any final thoughts today on the Werewolf of Andersonville?
Well, like I said, this was connected to my very first case that I ever investigated, so it's kind of been near and dear to my heart for a long time. But if there was, I told somebody this not long ago. If I ever, were to run into a werewolf, I hope he's around here. He's a homegrown kind. Okay,
Okay.
absolutely. And but it is a fascinating case, and I love especially the historical cases that go back before my time. But like I said, it had a connection to my time and to the case that I investigated when I think I was like 15 years old. So it's sort of it's kind of like going back down old memory lane kind of thing for me.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of joke around about how we've never seen you and a werewolf in the same room together. So we kind of wonder, like, could Dennis be? I mean, this is just adding to the list
I
of,
deny everything.
of maybe you being a werewolf. I'm just saying. It's pretty close to home.
That might be a state secret right now. That might be a secret power I'm holding in superpower that I'm holding on to right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, something that always sticks out whenever you bring this up is, oh, thank you. It says, thank you both for an informative podcast today. Jessica, you're a brave, beautiful soul lady, waking up and educating God's children. Thank you so much. Curious E. Is it E or L? That is so sweet. I appreciate that. Thank you for the super sticker. Okay, Dennis, something that always sticks out whenever you bring it up is that you were approached by a government agency because they needed people with special abilities, paranormal insight and abilities. That's pretty wild, and it's not shocking. I do the remote viewing stuff. I don't do it for any kind of government agency. Okay, I don't. But that's what our agencies use. Okay, they do use this kind of stuff, and I think it's important to point that out to the public. Is that is a factor? It is something that they are studying. It's something that they utilize. When I don't know how would they use that in the field, Dennis? Is it when they're investigating, like, I don't know, some kind of crime or what? Like, how would they utilize people like yourself in government?
Well, it stands to reason that if they're trying to recruit people with regular abilities or highly intelligent people or people who can do certain things they want, they would definitely go after people who have certain supernatural talents, shall we say. That wouldn't surprise me a bit. We know without a doubt they utilize remote viewers. They even have remote viewers that guard their remote viewers. Okay. I mean, the list is wild. I told somebody the other day, and I'm thinking seriously about this, of writing nothing but just a book on probably what the CIA is into in this respect, connected to the supernatural stuff. It would be fascinating because it's probably mind blowing. If we knew the real truth, it's like a guy said in a movie one time, if you knew the real truth, you'd probably never sleep good again. I don't. Okay. And that's what he said in the movie. And I don't, when I think about it, I have to wonder, what's really, really, truly going on in this world. But it's people like you, Jessica, shows like this. And that's why I support you so much, because it's so very important that we get the truth out, that the truth has a voice. You understand? We give that truth a voice. And that's very important, especially with people like you. That's why I tip my hat to researchers like you and other ones out there. We're doing what needs to be done in this world. And that's not only against the darkness and the things that are threatening us, but we need to never let the truth be suppressed. The truth needs to stand above all other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I had an interesting conversation. I don't always have interesting conversations, but I was talking with Trey on Saturday night on our show On the Hunt with him. He's with Squatch Me Now on social media, and yeah, he was talking about, well, why is Bigfoot not more mainstream? Okay, like why are they not making full out documentaries and movies on Bigfoot and stuff that are like legit, like big movies and things like that that are really good ones? And he's a filmmaker. And I'm comfortable with, I think it's cool that we have channels like this, like mine and yours, where we can talk about real life Bigfoot and werewolf encounters. We've got Telly here saying, I don't care who's talking right now or who's watching this channel, but I saw a white werewolf in April of
Let me say
2024.
this right quick. Let me say this right quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to say this. I'm getting old. I have to say something. Forget it. I lose my train of thought. What I was going to say is that back years ago when I started in all this, Jessica, like I said, I've been investigating this before some of y'all were born. But you didn't have that atmosphere then that you have now. There's a lot of things I haven't told that have happened to me that I've never let out because they would probably put me on the funny farm somewhere. Okay, you just didn't do that back then. It was not open. You didn't talk about it. You're not only the worst thing you could do. The best thing to do was call you a crackpot. It's a lot worse they could do to you. You would destroy your reputation. Would destroy you. There's a whole different atmosphere now. Things are coming out in the open. I love this because things are coming out in the open and things are more talked about now than they ever have been before. That's good. That's going to benefit us all in the end, that we get this stuff out and the truth is known, or at least talked about, or at least discussed in a civilized manner. Okay, definitely. That's a wonderful thing. But there's been a lot. That's affected me over the years, that I have not been able to have been as forthcoming as I should have been, because it kind of suppressed me that way. And now I like it now that we can get this stuff out and I can start telling about some of the things that have happened to me and other people I know and other things like that. This is good that we do this. Okay. It's absolutely needed and necessary.
Yes. Listen, I would much rather be here talking face to face with the world about our personal experiences and things like that than, being on some kind of TV show that's scripted. Okay. And the truth actually maybe getting suppressed or skewed in some kind of way. That's actually why I decided, when I was offered a podcast at KJRE Digital Broadcasting, it took me a little while to agree to it, because I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know what a podcast was really back then.
Well,
But
the very thing happened to me. I've been offered several times my own Hollywood shows. Okay.
yeah,
I wouldn't do it because it wasn't me that they wanted. You understand what I mean? It wasn't the real true me. I couldn't do it. I cannot be false like that. I'm sorry, I can't. I have acted. I've been an actor in a couple of movies, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about they wanted me to be different and not be straightforward with people. And I don't like that. That's why I like podcasts like this. You can get on there and you can talk, and you can bring out the real things that need to be talked about, and not something that Hollywood comes up with. You know what I mean?
that's right. I knew that it would be a great outlet to bring my fellow researcher friends on. And a lot of y'all are in the chat today and listening in and watching. And so I want to thank everybody who's ever been on any of my shows. We've got many more shows to go in the future. Okay. But it gives some credibility to the research field and everything, having people come on and tell their true stories. Their reality is they know it. Okay. That's their truth. And their experiences with the paranormal and the cryptids and things like that. So
Yep.
it's a blessing, and I prefer this outlet than I would a TV show that's scripted any day. Okay, but that's just me. That's just me. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for being here today, and for the wonderful audience that we have. We have the best audience on the internet. I know you got a great audience too, Dennis, but I stand by it. I think I got the best chat, hands down, on the internet, and you guys are just the best. And Dennis, you have a show tonight, and you have a channel. It's called Hunting the Shadows, and Patreon. Please go subscribe over to Hunting the Shadows if you have not already on YouTube. Dennis, what do you have in store for tonight?
Okay, well, tonight I will be doing at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be doing The Road Less Traveled. and we're going to be talking about Earthlight mysteries tonight. It's always a good and interesting subject, definitely. And Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I have Hunting the Shadows, which is my premiere, my number one show. And then on Friday nights, I have Paranormal Point of View. That's at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. And definitely you can reach me at DennisWCarroll.com. And my books are available on Barnes and Noble. Just look up Dennis W. Carroll. And if you need to contact me, you can contact me at DennisWCarroll.com or DennisWCarroll@gmail.com. Okay, if you need to contact me for anything on that.
Wonderful. I was going to try to type that all out, but I can't type fast enough and get that up there. DennisWCarroll.com. You guys definitely support Dennis by buying his books and going and giving a subscribe, a like, share out his videos over on his YouTube channel as well. You guys come meet us in the chat tonight. We'll be over there on Dennis's channel tonight. I'll be in the chat. I always try to hit it up every time he's live. All right, Dennis. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a fantastic time. And I did, yeah, I learned a lot today. I really did. I learned a lot. And we got
I always want to connect with my wolf tribe here.
Right, with the wolf tribe. Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of tribe, our good friend Kenny Star Fox made me an exit video for the show today. We're playing around with some videos and stuff. He's been so gracious. And yes, I have kind of changed it. I'm changing up my intro and my exit. There's some kind of copyright thing going on Facebook for some reason. And so I'm just, instead of trying to deal with that, we're just going to get something new. Okay. So if you guys are wondering where my songs went, we're trying something new. So thank you guys for all the support today. And I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, Curious L. You're the sweetest for that super sticker too. And all right, Dennis. Well, we'll see you tonight. You guys enjoy the new outro. I'm going to call it the outro video today. It is fantastic. I love it. Shout out to Kenny. You guys go subscribe to Star Fox Media as well. All right. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. We have Nick Sylvester coming on. Thursday night, we have our Kimra coming back with another remote viewing target as well. And I'll be back on Saturday too. All right, Dennis. We'll see you tonight. Y'all have a great rest of your day. All right. Let's see if I can find the button. Y'all stay safe out there. Remember what I always say, keep your head on a swivel and watch your back, but don't live in fear, and keep your vibrations high, everybody. I'll see y'all on Wednesday. Bye, y'all.